Hello, and welcome to the First Rate Podcast with your co-host, Baby Shark. Okay, we're not going to exasperate it. But we also have our wonderful co-host, because I still cannot find anyone else, and this guy is unfortunately still around. But give it up for David Suarez.
Hello, everyone. I should have been replaced by Baby Shark, but that is okay. It takes $10 an hour for him to be on screen. So
yeah, I mean, we're probably getting sued by what is it? Pink. What is the company called? It's like Pink something, whatever. They're on this right now because of the five people that are watching. One of them is like, the Illuminati and making sure all copyright laws are being followed.
Yeah, I did just receive an email. We are about to be sued.
Yes, exactly. So we've been off the air for a good 4 or 5 months now because our schedules have not coincided. I've been a part of the capitalistic system in the workforce.
And I eventually will be.
Yes, and you are still in school, right? But you're on break. That's why we're free.
Yes, it's perfect.
Yes. How is break, sir?
Well, I mean, I've seen a few movies that made my break kind of odd. I'm gonna say that. Yeah, there's a couple of movies that were just kind of, I don't know.
For our audio listeners, that's a little something that we call a cat. It shouldn't be called cat, but it's a cat, unfortunately. So we're gonna just have to go with it. But yes, there are what I love actually about this period. You and I have talked about this before, but like period between, I would say like November to like February is my favorite part of the film year because like all the Oscars, all the Oscar movies and like all the awards contention movies comes out, and like for example like the end of this week, I am going to watch 1917 and I am excited for it like so much.
Yes.
Only the thing is, January is a terrible month for like movies coming out in like that current year, but if it's like things carried over from the previous year, those are going to be great. But anyway, so because we've been gone for a good 4 or 5 months, I guess the best way to do this is just catch up on some of these so-called award movies for today. And yeah, we have a slate of movies to talk about. The best way to do this is we're talking about 2 Netflix movies and 2 blockbuster movies. And in terms of the blockbuster movies, we are talking about one movie that is, a movie that is made by, a corporate entity that wants to appeal to, a certain fan base and does it unsuccessfully. The other movie is Cats. So that's on our docket. I'll let your imagination run wild on what the first one is, but we'll get to the end of it and we'll talk about it. But there's not much in the news that is important anyway in terms of movies that I want to talk about. So we're just gonna skip that entire batch. Oh well, I will say one thing before we start. You saw the Golden Globes, the opening monologue.
Yeah, I always love I am a big fan of Ricky Gervais ever since his old Office days.
Yes.
That's how you're supposed to start off that slightly pretentious, beautiful trash.
Yeah. It's one of those monologues where you watch it, you're like, wow, he really doesn't give a flying F.
Oh, of course. You put money into this movie. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, no, and just him like calling out like Hollywood's hypocrisy in a way that most like people that don't like Hollywood would agree with. There's a lot of nuances I could go into, but this is not a political show. But I will say that it was a very funny, very on point, very scathing, and anyone who wants to dismiss this as like, it's nothing, I'm like, well, I guess your comedic tastes are different than mine. I would have to very much disagree with you, sir. But I loved the monologue because the Golden Globes I hate the Golden Globes. first off. As an entity, okay, the Oscars are bad in their own different way, but the Golden Globes is worse. And the reason for that is because everyone knows that the awards are trash because it's only handled by the Hollywood Foreign Press, which is about like 50 people, right? So you have 50 people, like this board of random writers giving awards, right?
Yeah. Sounds, I don't know, it sounds fair to me. I can't foresee any form of manipulation, bias,
bribery, potential.
bribery.
Oh, they have the worst categories ever, like best musical or comedy. Like what are those?
They go together so well. Haven't you seen the movie Cats?
Have you seen the movie The Martian, which is a great movie by the way, great movie, was won best musical or comedy at the Golden Globes. Like,
but
like even Ridley Scott went.
I enjoy that more than the Emmys for the most part because the Emmys is like bad in its own pretentious way, but it usually like actually gives out some good awards. I feel like the Golden Globes is such a joke that I can enjoy how awful it is. It's
literally like 3 hours of like Hollywood people getting drunk. Like it's literally them just not getting F. Like by the time Ricky Gervais was on, he was at minimum buzzed. At minimum buzzed. So that's why people watch the Golden Globes. Because no one cares, I really think they need to get more people like it because I think it was 2 years ago they had Seth Meyers and well, you know what kind of audience he's pandering to. It's like very, like doesn't like a certain group, which is like fine, but it's not that funny. It's like if you want to be funny, you should just like unabashedly just target everybody. That's what makes like
Ricky.
This kind of comedy. And that's why I like Ricky Gervais's comedy. Like, don't appeal to Hollywood. Like, you can crap on Hollywood and crap on America. Just do everything. Like, well, what did Ricky Gervais? We're all gonna die, and there's no sequel. Exactly. So get someone like that every year. Come on, NBC. You know that you got a ton of ratings. Get someone better. Get someone like Ricky Gervais. Anyway, so we're going to go into our first movie, and it is a movie by someone who hates amusement park rides. Oh wait, no, he hates Marvel. Sorry, that's doesn't like them. Thinks they are not cinema, which is also why I'm considering our end of the year podcast awards. One of them should be called "I Can't Believe This Is Not Cinema." So we're going to talk about. But anyways, but yeah, it's Martin Scorsese's most recent film, The Irishman, and. David, would you like to give a very quick synopsis as to what this movie is about?
Yeah, The Irishman is incredible. First of all, I've always been a big fan of mob, mafia, underground crime-related movies. I think the history behind them is really interesting, especially since you see the development of it in the Midwest quite a bit. And this movie entails a bit of the story of Jimmy Hoffa, one of the most well-known crime lords in the U.S. and throughout the world. And you get to see the rising of the Irishman, who is originally just this transporter character, through the ranks of the mafia in the Midwest as he gets more and more powerful and becomes more and more, what would be the right word? Just engrossed in the world of mafia and the beautiful violence that comes with it. It's a really good film, I think.
Yeah,
it's super long though.
Yes, it is very long. You have Robert De Niro, as you said, playing Fred Sheeran, who wrote a book before he died called "I Heard You Paint Houses." I think something along those lines, which is referenced in the movie a lot. And basically, his biography. Spoiler. This is spoiler of history, but his autobiography basically talks about how he part of it supposedly killed Jimmy Hoffa. Now, a lot of people say that he only did this just to, get money off the book deal and support his family. But the movie basically takes the side of, well, let's just assume. and let's see where this goes.
Mm.
Yes, I enjoyed this movie for what it was doing. I wouldn't say I completely I didn't love it, but I appreciate its artistic value. One of the things that obviously cannot be overstated is that this movie's acting is top notch. You have basically all of Scorsese's people, like from his past mob movies back. You have Robert De Niro, you have Al Pacino playing Jimmy Hoffa, you have Joe Pesci playing like the crime like what's the current term for the leader? Like he's the crime leader. You have Harvey Keitel back. You have all these things, and as you said, like this movie then also goes into what the intricacies of the mob and like how everything also like intertwines with like the politics of the time of the 60s and everything. Yeah, it's a very definitely a very interesting movie. Yeah, what did you think of all the stuff that they explored?
I thought it was interesting. I love seeing the different roles of the different Dons.
Yeah, that's the word I'm
Yeah,
looking for. Yeah,
yeah, different Dons. It was interesting because throughout my childhood, I'd never heard of the individual that actually killed Jimmy Hoffa, and it's still unknown. But I really like this take from the movie that they actually believed his autobiography and his story originally, and I was like, you know what, this is fair enough. This is interesting. Although it didn't exactly follow through the way I thought it would, but I thought it was great. It makes you feel how it wants you to feel, which is slowly degrading into nothing like an old man. And while I don't like feeling that, I appreciate that they were able to force me to feel that way.
yeah,
Which is a really interesting thing for a movie to do. Probably wouldn't watch the movie's ending again because of how slow it gets on purpose. But it was interesting. It reminds me of a lot of the crime that the mafia, well, the organized mob created in Ohio back in the day, and I was like, wow, this is actually really interesting. In places in Youngstown, Ohio, you actually can see rivers that at the base of them just had tons of guns laying at the base, and I was like, oh my goodness. When I was seeing that scene, there's a scene where he's just like getting rid of evidence, like once every night. It's just so funny. I'm like, oh my goodness, I remember when I heard about that as a kid. That's so cool. So this movie actually seems like it had a very good source of information for the original concept and the history behind it, which I really appreciated. It's an important history to know that's always represented in different ways in media, especially in older films. Thinking about Scarface and stuff like that. But this was a very good film with an incredible group of actors, and there's something so cool about the aesthetic of the mob. Like I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Oh, kid, here you go. We're gonna take over the world from the underground. It's an interesting aesthetic, even if it's ridiculously evil.
oh yeah, no, for sure. But before we continue further, we're going to talk about general, like very like broad spoilers. So if you don't want to hear more about this, skip to the time codes below, and you can see the non-spoiler aspects of other movies. But one of the things I do want to get into before touching on some of the themes or some of the other interesting parts, what did you think of the de-aging?
Oh yeah. Honestly, I mean, for most of the film, I was actually pretty impressed. Like, if you mean about like the de-aging of the actors and stuff, I actually thought for most of the film, I'm like, you know what? I could actually say that looks pretty good. There were some cases where I thought, wow, they really had to apply a lot there to make that work. But for the most part, I actually didn't care enough about it to really analyze it critically. I just thought, you know what? Yeah, this is pretty well done. They made them look very slightly younger. Although some of the characters look so old throughout every scene in the movie that I thought, wow, you really couldn't do much with this character, could you? Like some of the original Dons that Robert De Niro's character met at the beginning of the film don't really look as different or as old as I thought they would be as time goes on. And then the de-aging process just didn't really fit with what I thought it would. But no, not bad. I've
Yeah.
seen worse.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job. Like a lot of like if they did like the agent for like Al Pacino, like he looked really good. But I will say my thing with I didn't like Robert De Niro's de aging, only because it was a little bit distracting at the beginning because you contrast like him being very old in a wheelchair in the beginning to him driving, which is seems mostly makeup, right? Like that's like young. He's like you see that he's driving into that like gas station. Like it's like it looks like someone planted like a younger version of Robert De Niro's head on his current body, and that's kind of what disturbed me a little bit because it's like people like you expect someone like Robert De Niro, and especially if you look at some of his other movies like Taxi Driver and stuff, like he's much thinner, like just because of the course of time, right? But like for some reason, just unless they're going for that, which is a different thing. But it's like it doesn't work when like you only change the face, but you don't change the rest of the body.
Yes.
But from a technical perspective, like I'm like did a pretty good job. But I definitely was like weirded out sometimes, and once in a while I watch it be like, oh yeah, this is de-aging, cool. But it was fine. I appreciate what they did, and it's kind of like what I felt about Rogue One in Star Wars. Like when they try to recreate Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin, it doesn't look that good. It looks like at best like a good PS4 render of Peter Cushing. But that being said, in the same way, I say I applaud them for doing it because we need to. Okay, I might take what I'm going to say back in a second, but I think it's good that they can perfect this technology. That being said, I just read an article where they said they want to, they in a role they want to recast a digital version of James Dean in the Vietnam movie. So, in that sense, I might take my comments back there.
I don't like
Yeah,
that. I don't like
yeah,
that.
no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm like I start saying like, oh, it's a good thing they're trying to move it. I'm like, and then I'm like, is it though? But
The dead
anyways,
don't
but
die.
oh, the dead speak.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but that's just one part of the movie. But what I like about the rest of the movie is like most mob movies, how they show like the intertwining of government and the mafia, and you see that there's a reason why the mafia voted for JFK, not just obviously because they have a bit of culture similarities. They're like Catholic and everything, but you know, you want the casino in Havana,
In Cuba, that's right. That's correct.
you know, F Fidel Castro, not because he's a dictator, because he wants our freaking casinos in there.
Casinos. They just wanted their Cuban cigars in casinos. It was a very interesting reason.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. But it was interesting just seeing like, the things that go behind in politics that there are forces outside of just you and me when it comes to voting, which you and I like both know, and most people now know more, especially our current political climate. But you go back and look at examples of this. Now, how much of a impact it did have, that's a different story. But they definitely had impact. Like there's different forces that like they have their agendas and they want to press up onto it. And not only that, like you even see how like the mafia seeps into legitimate businesses, like Jimmy Hoffa, right? The Teamster, who is like part of the best, one of the biggest, unions in America at that time in the 1960s. And like he talks about all this brouhaha of like, the government is getting not even government, the government's getting you down, the businesses are getting down, but he himself is the problem in
Yeah.
some way. And he's captivating this audience, and it's got this very like authoritarian ring to it, just like I'm going to capture, the attention of the audience while I basically, fight with my successor about pensions and everything.
But he also
Yeah.
does it under the guise of a civilian, or he's like, who's the one who paid for you to do this? Who's the one who pays for them to give you jobs, right?
Yeah.
While maintaining a very clear, and even if you look at his old speeches and old newspapers, you can see this. he always maintained a very clear distinction between himself and all of his underlings, but also a very clear distinction between himself and the government, because he had to make sure you knew that the government sucks unless I'm in it, you know, to show I have the ruling power. With me, you all get paid, you all get money, you all stay safe. It's a very clear fear tactic without necessarily instilling fear.
Oh, my favorite scene of Al Pacino was when like JFK started cracking down on him because of RFK, and he gets super angry, and that like in the office, and then Fred is like he's yelling at everybody, right? Jimmy Hoffa, and then like Fred like walks away, and then Jimmy's like, no, come back. I met all of those people. They're just not you. I really like you. And
I don't have to deal with this, Jimmy. I don't have to deal with this. No. You're good. You're good. I love that.
Yeah, I really, yeah, it's very interesting, just that relationship, which it leads to its climax, right? And it's very interesting that like one of the things that like I listened to in the review I saw by Fandom Entertainment of critics Dan Murrell and Ralph Cornell. One of the things they talked about was just the way, like, with the nature of killing, right? Like, how killing is very sudden in this movie. Like Fred needs to kill someone. But when it comes to Jerry Hoffa, there's an emotion to it, right? And there's a genuine connection to it. But at the same time, what is the difference between him killing Jimmy and killing everyone else?
I mean, there is a great fear in killing Jimmy, right? When you kill the boss, you expect everyone to go after you. Mm-hmm. When you kill guy number one who talked bad to your daughter in a meat shop, or you kill some guy who owed you $5, right? Then the expectation is this is a bottom of the barrel person. It's actually pretty selfish. I mean, it is very emotional, but the reasoning is very selfish, really.
Oh yeah,
it's like, oh, if I kill this person, my self-preservation is maintained easily. If I kill Jimmy Hoffa and it's known that I killed Jimmy Hoffa, then my self-preservation, I'm very likely to die. And his daughter, and his wife, and his other wife, or ex-wife.
Yeah, it's very, and the way that you see him like lie to his to Hoffa's wife, right? It's very like, it's like you see a conflict in him, and this is like why De Niro's really good at, just like his performance. But also like it still asks the question, and this is like I'm transitioning to the third act, as you alluded to. This is where like Scorsese's Catholicism actually comes out, because Martin Scorsese, like in an alternate lifetime, he would have been a priest. Like, it was either him going to be a filmmaker or a priest. So if you see movies like, for example, Silence, which is actually one of my favorite films of all time.
My goodness.
You can, yeah, it's a great movie. It's like existential crisis all around. But you can really see that side of him coming out by the third act. And why I say that is also because it's talking about like basically the third act is him analyzing his legacy, and for lack of a better word, his sins. And just to see like how the sins he's committed just by the lives that he's taken, in the way that he a great disregard for human life, and the way he treats the way he treated his children, right? Like his children say like, look, like we didn't tell you anything because we knew you were just gonna like beat the living crap out of like and stuff. And
bakery guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the way when like his scenes with like the priest, you still see his selfishness, Pierre, because he doesn't want to like admit, he can't come to the realization and the admittance of like what he did was wrong, because he's so desensitized to it. Like he just doesn't, like, he's lived a life of violence and crime, and you just see that like his life withered to nothingness like is very effective. And as you perfectly said, I didn't like it either. Like I was like almost ready, checked out, but that's what the movie wants to say. That's what Scorsese wants to say. Like, all your past glories it ain't mean anything, man. Like you're gonna like whether you believe in the God or not. If you do, he'll judge you. If you don't, well, it didn't matter anyway. You just wasted your you wasted your life, right? So like, it's it's such a well done third act. I think it's also like I do think I really need to rewatch this just because it's so well done in its intricacies and the way it handles so many different tones. But it's also a movie. It's like reading like 1,000-page book or something. You're like, wow, this is great. I should reread it. But 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
Gotta go back to page one again.
It's also the heaviness of those pages, right? Like reading an emotionally heavy book.
Yeah. Why? It reminds me of Back to the Future with Doc is like when Marty's like, this is so heavy. It's like, what? Why is it heavy? Did the Earth's gravitational pull change?
When Score says he's writing, yes, it does.
Yes, I absolutely agree. The cinematography is great. I love the framing of time. Oh, my other favorite thing is again going back to the fallacies of like this kind of life. I love how whenever you meet a new person, the movie stops and shows how they died.
I love that. I love that so much. I love that because the movie just even in how comedic and incredibly funny that is every time when it just pauses. Like remember, there's like one where it's like he gets shot eight times in the head in front of his house. I'm like, okay, and then they continue to let him to give his dialogue. It's this beautiful. The movie has this incredible way of constantly reminding you that these people have committed awful things, but they also die in horrible ways. Right? It tries to maintain this balance, but also it tries to do it in a comedic way that reminds you this person is not getting off scot-free for anything they do. There is going to be an end to this person's life, so just enjoy them while you see them here on screen, right?
For sure. And this is also like this is one of the last points I'll make. But I love his relationship with his daughter. And a lot of people have criticized this movie about like, oh, Anna Paquin, who's the actress, doesn't get any dialogue. It's like sexist. I'm like I've heard criticisms of this. I'm like, no, that's the point. Because the thing is that it's not. You can look at multiple ways, but the way I see it is basically how, like, you're taking his point of view of his daughter and how he does in some ways treat her like kind of like slightly less than humans. Like, you should be grateful to me for all this while not considering her emotions. And that's what she would seem to him because of his, warped view of life. And that is done very, very well. So, yeah.
I think the daughter is a really important character. I'm surprised people say that actually, because I think that means they missed the whole point of her continued silence. Because then that also means that they don't understand, like his friend, the one that was like the uncle for the kids, right? Who was constantly
that was right. I forgot that relationship. Oh yeah.
Yeah, or lack thereof. But think about the Christmas scene. There's this incredible Christmas scene, everybody, where they're giving presents under and around the tree, and I can't even remember what that Don's name was. He was just a good guy for laundromat.
Oh yeah. And like he she's very scared of that Don, Joe Pesci's character, right?
Yes.
And
exactly.
which goes back to like when they first meet, when it's like that bowling alley scene where it's like she's just scared of like the two of them, and then during the Christmas thing, it's like she's very hesitant to even say thank you until like her parents basically are like, "Why do you say thank you?" That's just terrifying. But like Jimmy Hoffa, like she just she's like she can be herself.
Yes.
Like basically the whole like the father I never had type of trope. But it's done really well. But like it's one like The Irishman, like in conclusion, it's one of those movies that's like it's not like that enjoyable on first viewing. I got to see in the theater, which I'm very happy I did. But I couldn't say I enjoyed it, but it's one of those movies you talk about more and you see like how much, for lack of a better word, art like seeps through it, right? Like how Scorsese does a good job with all of his like making sure no stone is left unturned
Mm-hmm.
in his script, which is I think written. I forgot the guy's name, but the guy who wrote the script also wrote Schindler's List, so it makes sense
Oh,
like that. Like he would write like a 3-hour epic. That seems to be up his alley, right? So,
yeah.
and I think it's done really well. So yeah, I would say at this point, I would give this a better than the movie, but I can see myself on the second or third viewing giving this a weird not worthy, and given like 20 years, I'd be like, yeah, this is a wonderful movie. What about you?
I would agree with that. I'd say I'm teetering even closer to We Are Not Worthy because I think the movie has this really good balance between the human nature of the daughter and the monetary value of the mob and its focus on money. I think the
Mhm.
movie has also a lot of cases because there's a lot of duality in the movie. Art duality movies, you know how it, whatever. But the movie also has a bunch of beautiful scenes when they have kids being baptized in the water in the church, and you have
Oh yeah.
characters who are actually Catholic, praying and doing their cross, and then you have a bunch of mob characters who are in the church because their boss is in the church. But you notice that their hands are just fidgeting and they're just waiting and breathing and looking around and looking like annoyed and stuff. And it
Hmm.
shows this interesting thing where there's the cultural context of like Catholicism or any religion. There's a cultural context of just like I'm part of this group. They're doing it. I'm a part of this. It's a business thing. And then you actually have the people who believe in it. But also they're in the same business. So in a weird way, it doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like this duality that's also infused into like a singular business that's not necessarily affected by anything but the business. And then you go back to the Christmas scene where the daughter says it when the father says, "Say thank you for the ice skates." She says, "Thank you." And then when the Dawn character gives her like $10 or something as an extra present, he says, "Say thank you for it," and she doesn't.
Yeah,
She
right,
just doesn't.
yeah.
There's this interesting thing. Again, the daughter is human. She does not want to be associated with the blood money of the mob, right? I think a lot
Yeah.
of people that say that she didn't get enough lines, I think that silence spoke really well. She just had this terrifying look when she was like a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old. She just looks at him and just puts the money down. Like,
Hmm. Yeah,
I
for
don't know.
sure.
I think this movie has really good sense of duality, but also finds a way to erase any significance of the duality because
Hmm.
people just care more about the money and the business more than anything else, more than the
Yeah.
family, more than their own religion. And so, yeah, I'd say because of how clever it is, I'd have to put this at the very edge, like right before We Are Not Worthy. It's not there yet because I felt really bad during that ending segment. I was supposed to, but still,
Yeah,
3-hour film.
for
So
sure.
yeah, I'm right around there with you. I'd say this is just below We Are Not Worthy.
For sure, for sure. But yeah, we're again on the same page relatively on this.
Hmm.
That's a good thing. One of these days, I feel like for most of these movies we're talking about, we're on the same page. But I would love to have an argument. We are not going to have an argument about the Last Jedi.
Not a chance.
No, no, we are not
Spoiler
getting to
alert. I'm sorry, everybody.
that.
We just aren't. This isn't. We'll switch on to that one.
Yeah, but our next one, another Netflix movie. It's called Marriage Story, or as they would like to call it, Divorce Lawyers: A Marriage Story, because that's really what the movie is about. So, give a again, David, give us a very quick synopsis on who these characters are, what is going on, and why did I give it a secondary title?
Well, it's because we have this incredible little character, Ben Skywalker. He is in love with this.
He's in love with Black Widow.
He's in love with Black Widow. They have a kid in L.A. No, okay, it's an incredible Netflix film about a Broadway, or eventually Broadway producer and director of his own incredible little plays, and he has his wife who is an actress in those plays, and you get to, as a general synopsis, see the fall of their marriage as they find different life goals and they're trying to put their life together and keep their child as their lives go completely different ways when it comes to their goals artistically and also just emotionally as people.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Beautiful.
the guy is named as Charlie Barber, who Adam Driver plays, and the female in this one, Nicole Barber, played by Scarlett Johansson, is Charlie's wife. But yeah, I do agree. It's a very great film. The movie opens up with, if you've seen the trailers, you know this. It's like the whole monologue of like, what do I love about the other person? And like when I remember I watched it for trailer, I was like, wow, like these two are so in love with each other. It looks like they're like perfect for each other. And then you like cut like in the trailer it cuts to like the courtroom where like they're like signing the divorce papers. I'm like, oh, oh. And then the movie it cuts again, like again, Marriage Story. This is very broad stuff. It's like I'm not really spoiling like we're not gonna spoil like a lot. It's more like very conceptual things about like relationships, about character interactions, but it's like something you should experience yourself. And regardless of what we say, I don't think we will take away that experience. But if you want to go in, like totally blind, just stop this again. Time codes below, and just go watch it. It's great. But again, so the movie like opens up with like them monologuing about each other, and then cuts to them in couples therapy, and you start to see how they're like the cracks in their relationship because certain wants start bubbling to the surface, like because in a relationship, which is compromises obviously, but in most relationship the sad truth is that someone's wants usually outweighs the other person's wants, and if that person is not okay with that, that's where conflict arises. I've seen that a lot in my friends and like other people's just friendships, marriages, girlfriend, boyfriend, like this is just so like it's so real, and it's something that again this movie does well. Is like everything you see is so believable.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie everything about this movie feels very accurate. They get the entire process of not even just the legal process, but just the whole emotional process of still in a weird way either loving someone or remembering the memory of loving someone completely,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which also is really hard to differentiate. You have such strong memories with such strong feelings in them, and then also your current state of like, are those memories or are those how I currently feel, right?
Oh yeah.
The movie does that really well in lots of little interesting ways. It's small actions, little dialogue. It does that. But also the movie has a really good way of showing as it goes on, in very clear ways before it's even said in the film what the issues with the marriage are. They do say it eventually in the film, but you honestly don't have to hear what they're saying because they depict it very clearly as it goes on. Like, oh wow, this is a serious problem. These two definitely have different ways of expressing their desires. They were on completely different emotional tracks when it comes to what they're looking for. They're both in their early-ish 20s, and then at the end of their early 30s, right? Or at the end, I guess where the movie starts. But yeah, they're like in 10 years in New York or something. They're both around their 30s.
Yeah. Go into the thing about like how they don't see, things the same. Like Adam Driver, one part is like they're having discussion and he's like, oh, and Scarlett Johansson's like, oh, remember like this thing that you promised me? And he's like, yeah, but that was the discussion. And she's like, no, that's a promise you made me. And that's just and I'm like, oh my gosh, but like I've seen that so much. But also what I love about this movie is it doesn't take a side because it shows like how each one is suffering in their own right and also how valid both of them are, but also in ways that's like, okay, I see why you kind of effed up this way. But also I see why you did this, right? So...
Yeah, that's true. Also, this movie gets two emotions down really well through its actors that you can't really find as much in other films. Rage and regret. Like
at the same time, almost
right,
immediately after.
right. And those are the most human things because the regret and the rage are so heavily tied that but you know the characters so well that while the rage is taking over, you know the regret is going to follow.
So it's like coming right after it comes out of your mouth. I think we're referring to like we know the scene where we both know the scene that we're talking
Exactly.
about. And actually that scene like has been taken out of context. Like you show a clip on YouTube and a lot of people criticize the scene out of context and be like, this is like Oscar bait. But it's like I get it, but also if you watch the movie, it leads up to this point so naturally that it's like you watch it and you're just captivated. You're like, oh my goodness, it's these people duking it out and like putting it all like on the table, and then like things just escalate to like such a high degree, and then the rage comes in, and then the regret comes in. You put it perfectly, but also kind of going off a little tangent before we go into another main point in this movie. Did you hear about Adam Driver and his interview with NPR?
No, I did not. I did not.
This is actually really interesting. So Adam Driver is known for not liking to see his clips during interviews, which makes perfect sense because you need to have a huge ego to be able to listen to yourself and go, wow, I love the sound of my voice. Like every time I edit this podcast and have to hear myself.
Every time I hear this podcast, like I feel so bad because I'm like, my voice sounds like that.
Like I sound like a child. Like my goodness, like that's like that's a fear they have. And like Adam Driver has stated very specifically in multiple interviews, also with NPR, like in movies before this, that he doesn't like to listen to it. And they showed it to him, and he walked out. And I think he's completely justified because it's like he's made it clear, like past and present, that he doesn't like this. And as a human being, I completely understand. I don't like it either.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, maybe Adam Driver should have stayed there and took it, but like I get it. Like, don't want to hear. Don't want to. Yeah, I know.
It's a very intense scene, and I would also be embarrassed, not because it was done poorly, but just because hearing your voice on anything is a very different experience.
Just imagine yourself in that scene, and you'd be like,
yeah.
But going back into, there's two other points I can make about this. One of the points is this movie is also very funny in both a very wholesome way, but also in a very dark way. There's a scene that involves accidentally spilling stuff. Let's just put it that way. And it's like I watched this with my mom, so my mom's not really like into with like comedic bits, so it's like I didn't think about that part as comedy as much, but then I listened to people. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see that people in theaters were laughing at it, but it's like it's done in such a way that's like both like it's funny in the way that he's so stupid, but it's also just terrifying because I'm like, bruh.
Yeah. Bruh, also, his lack of original reaction is incredible.
I love the person that comes, the person he's talking to, and she's like, "Are you okay?" Like, yeah, I'm okay. And I was like, no, you are not.
That is bad. That is very bad.
You are not okay. But no, it's very funny in a wholesome way. There's like parts, if you've seen the trailer, it's like Scarlett Johansson's family still really, really likes Charlie, and just that's just the way that she's like, Mom, you can't be friends with him anymore. Oh, but I think he's still cool, and yeah, but it's really funny. And getting to the main thing and why I name this, divorce lawyers, a marriage story, because this movie basically is a warning being like, hey, if you guys want to get divorced, be ready for hell.
Yeah. You are
And
stripped of all say.
Was it Ray Liotta, the first lawyer that Charlie visits? Like, if we find a middle between like,
Crazy and reasonable, then we end up somewhere in the middle of crazy and reasonable, which is still slightly crazy.
Yes, exactly. So, like, it's like what's also about like this couple, like they still really they still respect and really love each other. They just can't handle like their future life goals. But when they have to do this, when they have to, when lawyers are involved, and they try not to have lawyers because they know this will happen. But once like Scarlett Johansson goes sees Laura Dern, and I get it that like I get Laura Dern's character, like I see why she's like this like feminist lawyer who's like all for like women, and they illustrate that like well, but my goodness, she's so manipulative too. Like she's like, oh, like tell me your story, and like bring in the cookies and like bring in the tea. Oh, I'll give you some cookies. I'll just tell me your story, and she like takes off her like shoes on the couch. It's just like girls, just two girls, hanging out, and just like that act of manipulation. Because like you do see like Laura Dern's the perfect lawyer for Scarlett Johansson's character, but she's also doing it for the money. And I just don't like it. And then the way they talk about like the whole legal thing about like how like the like where you're from.
Oh my goodness, that is such an annoying process. It's very accurate though. I will say that. Courts during divorce cases will use any bit of info they can when the lawyer really wants money. Mm-hmm. So that actually is a very accurate depiction of how the divorce process is. If you live somewhere for 10 years but you aren't from there, then they can totally manipulate that to their advantage. Also, yeah, Scarlett Johansson, her lawyer had one of the most interesting manipulation processes because, as you said, she brings out the cookies, she takes off her shoes. Eventually, after a while, she takes off her jacket. She gives her the coffee, and what's brilliant is she just lets her speak after she gets through her whole spiel about money. She lets Scarlett Johansson speak. Mm-hmm. And it goes into this 10-minute thing of Scarlett Johansson, who was crying before, standing up with her coffee, going to the bathroom, like blowing her nose, coming out, continues to talk and gets excited. And it's a very simple way of both showing how manipulative her lawyer is, but also how trapped she was with someone who wouldn't give her the chance to talk. And so now it's just an inundation, just a flood coming out of it. The movie is really brilliant like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. But going off the back, excuse me, the legal implications, just like they both agree, like the couple before their child was lived is a New York person, right? Even though he was born in LA, they live in New York. But because this is why like I hope you and I like marry the right people. Because Scarlett Johansson takes like their kid to LA and basically unofficially takes him custody, like sole custody, and based on legal reports, it's like legal standards, it's like he's now in LA and needs to be tried by LA courts. And basically, since Adam Driver's character is a New York person, and Scarlett Johansson has was from LA, like it's in her court now, and it's like
literally,
it's oh my god, and just like the way like Adam Driver, like Charlie is just like, this is total BS. We agree. It's like like his like the lawyer, the old person who has the great lines like, you remind me of in my second marriage. And he's just Adam Driver is just so like, oh, like what is this BS, man? Like what is this BS? And then he like and I'm too, like as the audience, you're like, yeah, this is totally BS. Like
right? There
Like,
was an
why?
agreement.
It's like all these like complication stuff, and it's why like if you don't have a solid relationship with, and you could like you see the cracks, like you need like it. You might want like verbal confirmation or like a
A
contract or something.
contract. Oh my goodness.
You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those things. It's like you can like as you mentioned before, just any like the lawyers like will just throw like random bits of things and conversations at it. And it's, like these two are really they mean well for each other, but then when like their lawyers push for it or they push or like one of them just wants one thing and the lawyer's like, I'll go like 10 extra steps for you because I'll get more money and you're only already paying me like $500 an hour. Like it's like
Jeez.
and I've actually listened to I've listened to someone talk about this before on a podcast called Double Toasted by the name of Corey Coleman. And he talked about this like one of the things that like people say like oh like if you're married you shouldn't talk about this because a lot of people get divorced after this. But
Mm.
he said, and I actually agree with this. This movie is more of a warning to be like, look, if you two like if you two like want to save your marriage or like have try to salvage the relationship like you can try to do it because this movie shows like just like do you really want to go through hell basically and
Yes.
just the ways in this movie shows like in some ways more importantly what not to do in a deterioration of a relationship. And yeah, I really do think like and I agree with that. It's just like I think this movie is a good way just to look at like how to how to effectively communicate by showing a lot of examples where they weren't able to effectively communicate.
Hmm. Mm. And what's also really interesting is that because they couldn't communicate, they ended up using a lot of their own little faults that they knew about each other against each other, right? Things that should have not mattered at all. In that court case, they brought up the most minute details, most minute mistakes, and the lawyers used it against each other. It was a bloodbath for like little spills of little things, small details. But what I love about this movie is also its structure and its change in focus as it goes on. The movie does for a great deal of it focus on the married couple on their way out, through this divorce. But as the movie goes on, it slowly starts to integrate the child more and more into the dialogue,
Mhm.
into the focus, which is the whole point, right? Like, oh, the parents have to constantly remind each other that it's about the kid. It's about the son. It's not just about them loving each other or not, and where they're from or not. It's about the kid. So the movie is constantly and continuously trying to remind the parents and then remind the audience that the kid exists, right?
Yeah. And it's also in some ways the reason why they're fighting over it. Like Adam Driver does go points like I need to know in the future that I fought for him, which is
Yes.
like very like sad. And also you realize, and I think a lot of other movies touch this better. Like a lot of '80s movies, like E.T. covered this. It was like, what does it feel like from a child's perspective when like you know after the divorce or after the separation, right? And yeah, a lot of movies cover that very well in the last 30, 40 years. But I think this movie does a good job of just seeing like what led to it and how like confused the kid is, but also how kids do not really understand what's going on, and they won't understand it for like years to come. Like it'll
Hmm.
slowly build in them, and then they'll like, and something will happen. Then they'll realize it, and even this movie goes on to say like there's little cracks in which this kid has to understand all these things, but this kid really does not understand the dilemma of what's
Hmm.
happening, which makes sense. Like a 5 year, like it's not five, it's like 10 probably. Like this 10
Yeah.
year kid's not gonna know, and not gonna know how to deal with like emotions that he probably doesn't know exists. And it's kind of like in some ways a prequel to all the movies that cover like what does a kid feel like after the divorce.
Yeah. And they did it well. They did it well. I think the movie does give credit to the child and that children are very flexible. So, they will kind of just
He's not that. There's some parts he's not that flexible.
some parts, but at the same time, as time goes on, he starts to get it a bit more and more.
Yeah.
Because, his mom took him to LA, And so there is some very clear bonding that the mom cleverly manipulates so that there is this kind of status like, oh, mommy has toys, mommy has this fancy thing, I want to be. And then as the movie goes on, the child also matures very slowly so that the child can like see the value of the very few little items the dad has compared to the mom's nice mansion and all that. So you kind of get, which is actually pretty accurate. You know, kids love shiny things, but they learn after a while. What I think I also love about this movie is when it comes to the whole idea of the motivations of the parents, it goes actually really well with your understanding of the characters' individual backstories, which is not usually talked about much in the film, but there's some discussion. Like with Adam Driver's character, you hear a little bit about his parents, and you hear about his like perspective on parents because of how his parents were not that great. Without
Yes.
going into too many spoilers, it is very clearly implied that he did not have a good upbringing at all, and that what is heavily implied is he is one of those brought up by his own bootstraps kind of guy. Like he did
Yeah.
everything by himself because his parents clearly did not, and it really helps in understanding why he might feel so competitive throughout the movie, why he wants to win, because as a parent, he wants to show I fought for him because my parents didn't really care about fighting or changing for me. There's a very subtle way of using minor backstories and minor understanding of their past in ways that become very clear
Yes.
motivations and very clear descriptions of like, oh, this is why they might act like this. You get that a lot more with Scarlett Johansson's character because you do have her mom still present, you know, very annoying but still present. And then the movie even has a cool way of talking about how different are you really from your parents?
Oh
How
yeah.
different, right? And then there's so many good ways because this movie isn't just about the marriage of the main characters; it's about their parents' marriages, and it's about like
And their
their
siblings'
and their
marriage.
siblings' marriages. It is a marriage of everyone's marriage. It's a marriage of a family, right? Your
Yes.
family is still mine, even when we're not together. It's very creative. It's very emotionally accurate. So much so that it's very annoying at times because of how accurate it is. Like, oh
Oh
no,
yeah.
this is so upsetting. But I adore this film. I think it's a needed. I think it's necessary for people going through divorce, especially kids, to see this movie. Like teenage years maybe, so they can get a better perspective of why this stuff sucks. Even when it comes to the mediator, the court forces
Oh
onto
yeah.
them.
Yeah. So give a rating. I think you and I both know what our rating for this movie is.
Yeah, I actually would say we're not worthy here. I would say we're not worthy for this one. I adore this to pieces.
Yeah. Same with me. It's somewhere in my top 10 of the year. I think it's like number 5 or 6. Again, for everything that you said, it's also um I think an even more depressing version of La La Land. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, I can definitely understand
Have
that.
you seen it? La
Yeah,
La?
yeah. I saw it a couple weeks ago because they actually had like something during Christmas or something like that. They actually had a good sale on it. I was
Yeah,
like, ooh,
it's basically like, well, if you haven't seen La La Land, well, go watch La La Land. But the it's kind of like what if Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone got married, and then what happens afterwards? It's like an even darker version, which is like, maybe you guys separating isn't that bad of an idea.
yeah. Now featuring only two songs.
Yes, yeah. Oh, Adam Driver singing in this
I
movie.
liked that a lot. I like both of their singing. I like both
Oh
their.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. They both have sing. So it's a musical also.
It is La La
Uh,
Land. Look at that.
yeah. So that's a we love this. It's on Netflix. I wish I got a chance to watch this in the theater. It wasn't. I didn't have time to watch it in theaters. But yeah, I kind of regret that. But if you please go watch this, it's going to be up for a ton of awards. It got nominated in the Golden Globes, rightfully so.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and yeah, it's a great movie. So we've cleared our art house movies,
Yes.
which I'm kind of sad because we have to talk about corporations.
From art house to fun house. What do we see? What do we see?
Let's which one you want to do first?
You know, let's go with. I had more fun with one of them, even though it's scarier. So let's go with Cats first.
Ooh.
Because I have a lot of.
Let's talk about the background of how we got, like, how we basically ended up doing like Cats. Oh wait, I shared this. I think I accidentally clicked. Okay, there we go. But yeah, so basically we're talking. I called you one time and I was talking about Rise of Skywalker, and basically I told you, spoiler for Rise of Skywalker in terms of our reviews. I said I didn't like it. But I said Cats looks great because of all the media hype that was going on and all the visual effects problems, and like the fact that this movie wasn't locked till like 24 hours before, and the fact that they had to add, during like the Sunday of the first week, they were like, we are shipping a new copy because we have a scene of Judi Dench with human hands, and we need to fix that, and this movie lost $70 million. Did you see the post that I showed you about like someone like chatting? I don't know if this is real, but it's like someone like chatted like the Facebook page of Cats, and it was like, oh, I like the movie Cats, and the guy, the social media guy, was like, oh, what was your favorite cat? Sven. No, you lost 70 million or something like that, and then the guy blocked him and was like, yeah, this movie's losing money, but I basically told you, like, hey, you're gonna have more fun with Cats. And I would say in some ways, yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
Yes. And I will start off by saying my friend, who is not really religious, after the movie, he said, this is the reason why we all deserve God's wrath. And went on a huge tangent about basically every single form of like damnation by whatever religion you believe in. But I'm not going to ask you about what this movie is about because we don't know. We this movie has no plot.
Just like the original play, no plot.
Let's just start off with one thing. Okay.
Yeah.
The first third of this movie, okay, I'm just gonna this is gonna be all spoilers, but then again, there's nothing to spoil because you cannot have the tangible experience just by us telling you. You have to go see it for yourself to experience the true glory and pain of seeing this movie. So, anyways, the first third of the movie is basically Victoria getting the white skin cat gets dropped off and by a human, which is never established. They never established what world is this. Is a post-apocalyptic world, and why are cats all in Paris with no humans around, but no one cares, right? Yeah. But she gets dropped off, and basically everyone starts saying about Jellicoe cats and the Jellicoe choice, which apparently is like the afterlife. Basically, they all have a party, and then the old Deuteronomy, played by Judi Dench, basically gets to pick who goes to heaven, basically. So the first third is them basically introducing characters that might want to enter the contest. And the way, the way they went is if you saying something that pleases old Deuteronomy, you get, into heaven, basically. And the first third of this movie, again, introducing people that want to be in the contest and all your main characters, but also is literally everyone being thirsty for Victoria.
That's very true.
Am I not? I told my friend after, I was like, it's just the first third, like everyone just wanting like literally like have sex with Victoria, and he's like, no, you're not wrong. And I'm like, okay, thank God I'm not the only one, because like everyone's just looking at her like
it's a new There's a new cat on the block.
There's a new cat on the block. Like every single like male cat just looks at her like, oh,
yeah,
where? I'm like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just.
Jason Derulo was looking at her like kibble, and it was very uncomfortable. Milk! Jason Derulo screams milk very loudly in this movie.
Just the way that the cats dance is literally like, what are you dancing to? And like, why is everything like super sexual?
Yeah, because most of Victoria's dances were very like
why are you lifting up your leg? Like I don't lift up your leg. Like why? And why is and why is like again, like I probably have a more conservative interpretation in the sense like I try not to see as much, but like you cannot not see this. It's like so like how in the world does like Tom Hooper, the director who directed really good movies. I actually like his adaptation of Les Miserables, minus the singing, but and I like The King's Speech, and he made a great, and I mean a great miniseries, HBO TV miniseries, and John Adams goes from those magnum opuses to this.
I don't know what you mean. The moment that I saw those cockroaches in human costume, I thought, this is an art house film. I don't know what you...
I'm watching this movie with a friend tomorrow. Okay, and first off, why in the world... Okay, first off, clearly I'm going insane because I'm watching Cats for a second time. That is a given. Yes. But that is the part where the friend that I'm taking, I'm gonna try to see her reaction because I just want to see her like drop, and that's one of the things that you want to watch. This is the one thing, the one rewatchable factor is taking people who haven't seen it, and they are not ready for this. Literally, they are not ready.
They are not.
What's about to happen? And oh my goodness, like I will say one thing, like I don't know. Okay. Again, this movie is terrible and there's nothing redeemable about this. But the interesting the choice that they made is they made Victoria the main character in the movie, which in the play is actually not the case. In the play, they just start singing and everyone is there. Like, no one's like, sure. I guess if you want to make the subplot of everyone being thirsty for her, I guess. So there's that. That's the main change. But yeah, all the let's just before we get to the grotesque CGI, which I have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about the cast. This is a big cast.
It's a star-studded cast.
Very star-studded. It's a Jellicoe cast. But I hate almost all of them.
I think seeing Ian McKellen lap water out of a bowl was the best thing I've ever seen him do in his career.
He literally method acted a cat.
Oh, what?
He method acted a cat. He like I swear, like he's literally like Tom Hooper was like, "Hey, you're gonna play a cat." He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna do all my research. I'm gonna go on the street, like see some stray cats, and like just like replicate their movements." And then Patrick Stewart with the dog, with like walking his dog, is going, "Are you okay, man?"
I can definitely see that.
And just Anne McKellen just meow 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 meow. Oh gosh. I think that like they're all like okay.
How is the singing from these actors?
That's the last thing I was thinking about. But they're okay. I'll admit this. I have a bad time judging like singing because I'm like I suck at singing. So if you can hit certain notes, that's fine. But if you like point out like, oh, this is not good singing because X, Y, Z, I can believe you. It was fine. They hit their notes for the most part. There's definitely some points like I think like Anne McKellen sings like or like when Ray Winstone, who plays Growl Tiger, like the big muscle on the docks, it's like but like our James Corden and Rebel Wilson and
that's something.
But anyways, Okay, I'll say one thing. I feel very, very bad for Francesca Hayward, who plays Victoria, because she's like very earnestly playing this. 'Cause she comes from like a theater background.
Mm.
Like she's going in this and she's like, "This is my big break. Like this is gonna be." But now she's gonna just remember it for Cats, and I feel legitimately bad for her. And I, like she's like trying, and this is the one part where I'm like, I actually do applaud casting because one of the things I don't like about musicals is they just get like all these big stars who can't really sing. But when they get someone like, Francesca Hayward in this, or like in Les Miserables when they got the like whoever was playing Eponine like from the Broadway, and it was like, oh cool, it lends legitimacy, right? And also gives you enough exposure to be like, hey, if you can act on the big screen here, maybe you can act somewhere else. Because like the transition from like theater to like film is really, really difficult. Like people talk about like transition from TV to film, like which is difficult, but like theater to film is non-existent because, well, theater's in New York and film is in LA, but it's just like, and I feel so bad for Francesca Hayward because they're gonna read her, she's gonna sign up, and her agent is gonna call all these people and gonna be like, hey, I heard you have a role for female lead here. Yeah, who's your client? Francesca Hayward. Who? What was the big movie that she was in? A Cats. Hands up.
Poor girl.
I feel bad.
She was one of the only good parts of the movie.
Like she's not bad. Like Jennifer Hudson is also not bad because she does a really pretty good rendition of Memory. Like it's basically like the Anne Hathaway moment in like Les Miserables. My friend put it perfectly. He was like, yeah, like you feel this is the only part you feel the emotion of tension in this. But then you remember they're all cats and none of it matters.
It's so true. I think, you know what, when we're talking about the cast, I would agree with everything you have to say there. That's true. But going on to the general music, and when it comes to the audio, one issue that might have been my theater, and I want to know if this happened to you as well, I couldn't really understand the lyrics or the words being said for the first half of the film. I wasn't sure if it's because the background sound was so loud, or also I just couldn't understand and comprehend the word magical cat or whatever the heck they were saying.
Jellicle cats.
Jellicle. I was like, what kind of words are being said?
I will say one thing. They repeat the same words.
Yeah.
Jellicle.
Cats do what Jellicle can. Jellicle cat.
Gosh.
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
Now, yeah, there's some weirdness. I think my greatest complaint to the movie is inconsistency. When it comes to the CGI and also just like what some characters actually very much so move like cats, and other characters and actors are just humans in cat whatever attire.
It's not even just that. It's also just the way they wear clothes, and that's inconsistent.
Some of them have like there are 2 dancers per group or per song that just have like Nike Airs on.
No, literally like Nike might as well like have the Nike logo and have the cats like stare in the camera and be like, this segment provided to you by Nike. Like it's not even that. It's like they're so inconsistent. Like they have shoes. Sometimes they have shoes. Like, and then sometimes they wear like coats, right? And that's what makes like, for example, Idris Elba, who plays McCavity, right? Like he's wearing a coat half the time, and then when he has his big song and dance, right, he takes the coat off, and I'm like,
is he naked?
Pardon my language, but am I supposed to be aroused here?
Is this a naked cat man I see before me?
Is this supposed to like? I don't get what I'm supposed to be, because they're so it's so jarring. But it's not even so. Their clothing is inconsistent. That's one thing. So we talked that their clothing is inconsistent, their actions are inconsistent. But let's just talk about staring into their soulless faces for Netflix. Because here's the thing that you don't know, and this leads into the whole subsection about clothing. You do not know if you're watching a person who's in the cat suit, or a version of the actors in the cat body or just a deformed human being? I don't know. And I cannot stare into Judi Dench's face for more than 5 seconds without legitimately being scared to death. Like, I'm like staring into like the face of like Satan himself. That's how I feel.
It's every time they smile is when you really start to see it, because whenever their eyes squint, then like the shadows around their eyes just become very dark and it gets very unnerving and scary.
It works better when like I don't know these actors or actresses, because then you're like, okay. But then when you see like that Anne McKellen, Ray Winstone, Idris Elba, you're like, the uncanny valley is literally right in the middle that you're literally like your head starts to split.
Yes.
Headache.
Yes. The movie also does very poorly with its background cats. Because when they focus, if you watch when you watch the movie a second time, you'll notice this. If you haven't already, when some of the main, actually that sounds like a punishment. That sounds like torture. This might actually be a Scorsese
I'm punishing
film.
myself tomorrow. I don't know why. Maybe I should audible and watch Little Women. Maybe
this is a Scorsese film because it is torture. There is a bit of torture in it, you know.
Oh, I will say one thing for Scorsese. You're right. This is an amusement park, right? It's a terrible one.
This is art. Yeah. This film just, when it comes to consistency of the hands, right? Because I saw it before the edited form was released, a day before, and some of the humans or cats or whatever you want to call these creatures of unknown power and identity, some of them have the fur that comes all the way up to the end of their hand, and then some of them just have human hands.
Yeah, and like polished fingernails, like on Jennifer Hudson's character.
That's right. I forgot about that. There's also a scene with mice in the movie, and it's the worst Uncanny Valley because I think they get children to play the face of the mice, but it's just awful scaling, awful. Like their faces are slightly stretched, but also their bodies are way too small. So just the scale, it's just, oh man, it's so uncomfortable. Oh, geez.
You can play that scene. I told you this a couple weeks ago. You can play that scene, cockroaching to like the Imperial March or the Chinese national anthem, and it syncs up very well.
I don't like that.
Probably I need to post it. This is my side project. I'm going to post it on YouTube and try to get 1 billion views on that. But it's also the cockroaches. It's either the rats or the cockroaches when they're dancing on the train. Remember? And there's a problem with that train scene. I hate that train scene so much. Okay, I get that you want to do like this whole transition to like fantasy, right? Even though this entire thing's already lost its credibility as a fantasy to begin with. But barring that aside, I get the transition, right? You wanted to have actual dances on the train. That's okay. That's fine. Number 1, why the F with that wide shot? Like that wide, do you know what I'm talking about? Like they do a wide shot where like you see like the silhouetted figures of these cats on a train, and it just looks so jarring because first off, it reveals how disproportionate these cats are. Number 1, and B, they're so small in this wide shot, and it's like because you're doing a regular wide shot for what you would do for human characters.
It's so weird. These are small cats.
These take like 10%, like less than 10% of the height of the screen. And I'm like, what? Why'd you decide to do this wide shot? Like, this is the thing where like you start questioning like these things. And you're like, and I literally, that was actually one of the most jarring things. I'm just like, as someone who likes sequencing and editing and all stuff, like, how about you just take your piece of CGI footage, just zoom in a little bit on like Adobe Premiere Pro, just like zoom in 200%, boom, it looks a little bit more tolerable, just a little bit more tolerable. This entire movie is intolerable to begin with, but at least I won't question that specific issue. But going off of that, and what's even worse is the dancing on the train, that they exit the train, and on the corner of the screen is one of those damn cockroaches. And I'm like,
I hate that.
Where the F did you come from? Where?
They look disgusting. They do look
Like,
disgusting.
talk about Easter eggs. Like, holy, holy.
I mean, I wish that was the part of the movie I fell asleep in, because I fell asleep for 5 minutes in this film, and I went back to see when I fell asleep. It was pretty early on. It was when she was on this bed with pearls on her necklace is when I fell asleep. So I missed exactly one song that apparently wasn't that good, where she was on a bed with pearls.
Oh no, that was the best part.
Oh, darn it! Of course I missed that. Another scene where they sexualize her and put her on her bed looking all... What? How could they do this? Oh, jeez.
I forget that. That's also one of the worst scenes. Also, that scene you missed was also the worst when it came to scaling. Like, they're at a human table trying to eat food, and you're like, what? That doesn't make sense. Oh my gosh. Lighting is bad in this movie because there's a scene where Anne McKellen is like singing, and the top and his bottom look very different, like color-wise, the way the lighting hits it, and you're like, wait, why is his bottom like dark and like gray, and his top is like yellowish? Mm-hmm. And then after he gets out the shadows, it looks fine, but then you're like, this lighting looks absolutely terrible. Oh my gosh. But let's talk. Okay, the movie where I'm like, it's super like way too sexual for my taste.
Yes.
And
there's way too many leg spreads.
No, and the scene where, again, shoes, is when, I didn't even know this was her. When Taylor Swift sings McCavity, I'm like,
yeah.
First of all, I didn't know that was Taylor Swift. I legitimately did not know that was Taylor Swift. Like, I look into her, like, I don't know, maybe I was just like, but then I was like, what the heck is going on? She like does the whole song and like pours catnip.
Ugh.
Like, what the heck is going on? And like basically just drug inducing everybody. And I'm like, what?
The worst part is that the reactions from the actors during this catnip scene is not like, oh, we're kind of sleepy or something, but instead it's more like euphoric, and some of them have their eyes roll and in the back, and it's just really uncomfortable. They
took like weed laced with Viagra.
Exactly. That's actually a very accurate way. Yeah, it's sadly that is a very accurate description of it. And if a single speck of it touches you, you just go into this extremely uncomfortably sexual mode of
I'm okay. Now that we talked about, I'm gonna talk to my friend tomorrow, and I'm gonna be like, "This is what you're in for. Do you still want to watch this? Because we watch Little Women." I'm legitimately like, we talked about The Irishman before, and the more we talk about it, the more we loved it. This is what we talk about. The more I'm like, do I actually really want to subject my friend to this?
Yes. No.
I mean, yes, but no. And
yeah, because you're a good friend.
Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna ask her tomorrow. Just be like, this is what you're in for. Do you still want to watch this? If so, I warned you. Okay, but let's go to even more this is the part where I feel like I want to literally walk out the theater. And this is also the part where the translation of Broadway to film just completely doesn't work. And you and I both know what that is.
Oh my goodness. Oh no, not again.
Freaking ending.
I can't stand that.
Where the movie doesn't know how to end because it's like, oh, Jennifer Hudson is going up and it's cool. Okay, I'm like, okay, well, cool, we got our mate. But no, you spent the next 5 minutes okay.
Talking to us?
For context. It works in the Broadway because the reason is because an entire play sets up that the cats know that you're watching them.
Yes.
So it's consistent tonally with everything. Again, I'm not saying the play is good or the play is bad. I've definitely enjoyed it being bad. But it's at least it makes sense within the context. You go in this direction. Okay, you're gonna end with a fourth wall breakthrough. None of this movie has established a fourth wall breakthrough, and you spent a good 5 minutes being like, next time you talk to a cat, please give a cat like was it like salmon like something, like, and then
Oh yeah.
Judy Dench makes this little like ton
Liver.
motion. Like I'm like, did I just say that?
Actually, her and Victoria and whoever the male cat is from the beginning, all three of them sitting up there, all lick their lips, and they're like, I'm like, stop.
I'm like, no, don't. Like, don't do that. Again, like this movie has no plot, no character development. The songs I hate for like 99%, except for Memory, because Memory is the only good song. But like this is what I don't like is when you go from like orchestra to like upbeat music. Like I don't like this when like go from like like Jellicoe Cats, like you have like a upbeat like 80s thing to like to like some orchestral like sad version of it. I'm like, totally, like why? Like this is why, again, the source material is bad in my opinion. Like the source material is bad. You have inconsistent like tonal shifts like in music. I hate it so much.
It's so hard to talk about this movie because of the lack of plot. So the hardest part about talking about this movie is you have to think about all of the individual issues with its production, with its depiction, and like try to work through all of this. Because yes, everything is just wrong and weird and awkward. And then at the ending, when you think they could do something right, they just don't. They just don't. And they do not know how to depict any form of emotion besides sad, happy when they're dancing, and euphoric to the point of possibly being sexual. There's no such thing as like,
not
kind of happy,
even
like,
to the point of sex. It's not even a question if it's to the point of sexual. It is sexual. It is. It just is. And the
how do they lick their lips? Well, that's
no, it's it's just also two more people I want to say how much I hate them in this movie.
Yes.
Rebel Wilson and James Corden.
Oh my goodness.
Like I legitimately hate them only because they like there's some like okay, God bless Ann McKellen for trying.
But, he tried.
But oh my god, Rebel Wilson was playing Rebel Wilson. James Corden was playing James Corden. And I hate James Corden being James Corden in this. Like usually I like his like what's it called? Like sidewalk musicals, like and his like karaoke stuff.
Yeah.
Those are pretty cool. But like but this one where he's like he has this fourth like the oh, can you like jump on this and like oh no, like he's literally being James Corden in that moment. I'm like
yes.
James Corden was also in the Emoji Movie.
It was an omen. We should have known all along. Darn it, another film without a plot.
Anyways, yeah, this movie is terrible. And it's only enjoyable in the sense that you've known that in your lifetime you got to see this legitimate piece of trash. And okay, and yeah, I really did not like watching this, and the more I think about it, the more I hate it, to the fact that I might want to audible with my friend tomorrow and be like, do you want to see this? We can watch Little Women. I heard that's good.
Yeah. The more we talk about it, the more I think I realize maybe I did enjoy Star Wars in some aspects a lot more than this.
I don't know. It's like, do you want to enjoy being disturbed, or just in terms of Rise of Skywalker, just being meh?
Yeah, I guess disappointment versus disturbing are two very different D words.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say this. Okay. To summarize this movie, halfway through the movie, my friend took out his phone, and we were an hour in, and he looked at me like he wanted to die. He said, we are only halfway through this. Through this.
That's so depressing.
Is that gonna be me? tomorrow. Anyways, I'm gonna give this a. I'm not even gonna do what we did for like. I'm gonna replace our rating with like an even like with a room quote. You're tearing me apart,
Lisa.
Lisa.
Yes.
Because you're legitimately tearing me apart right now. But we're gonna give a rating off the scale. Like
this is -1.
God. You would also. I'm sure you would give it that.
Yeah. If there was any, I mean, I adore The Room, but it's just so it has so many good quotes for awful things. And I can't think of any quote that really depicts how awful this movie is. So I'm going to agree with you there. This movie is tearing me apart. Oh, hi, Mark. Yeah, this is well, Jellicle Cats can and Jellicle Cats do. This movie cannot, and it does not. So I'm going to give it the worst rating we can possibly give it. It's just awful.
Yeah, I am going to. Well, we finally got that out of our system.
Yes.
I've been waiting for a good, probably like a weekish to talk about full thoughts. So I'm really happy we finally got this out of the way.
Right.
I guess the only thing I say is do you would we recommend this film? It says only if you're willing to go through pain and suffering.
Yeah, this movie is a little bit of artistic hell. If you are watching it with a friend, I think there's more you can get out of it. I saw it in an empty theater. There was only one other lady in the whole theater when I went to see it. And her and I didn't know each other, and neither of us really enjoyed it because she left pretty early on. So, I think you'll enjoy it more if you watch it with friends so you can just trash talk it.
Trash talk it and commiserate.
Yeah. Exactly.
The question is, do I want to commiserate
with a good friend of yours? You know what?
Dude, it's do I even want... Oh my gosh, I'm looking at the cast notes. I put in my notes. Jennifer Hudson's character is called Grisabella.
Grisabella Deuteronomy.
Bustopher Jones, James Corden. Also, James Corden is on top of the cast list. He's number one on cast list. I don't get it. Anyways, okay.
Huh.
We're done.
Yes, no.
We're done with cast.
What is this new Star Wars film called? Because I can't take any more of this trash.
Okay. Let's talk about Rise of Skywalker. Let's just talk about our thoughts on the sequel trilogy. Okay. First off, going into this, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about the movie itself, and we're going to talk about this release that JJ got, which I'm
yeah.
Okay, I get it, but you guys have legitimately no idea how film works.
Yes.
But we'll get to that. So, what did you think of this, the previous two, and what were you expecting going into this movie?
Okay. So I might be a bit different than I think the fan base is pretty split, but for the first of the sequel trilogy, for the first one, I thought nothing particularly explosively new. A couple new characters here and there that I really enjoyed. I loved Finn, cool characters. So I was all right on. And then Rey was pretty good in the first one. So I was all right, good. I thought it had a good slow start. It felt very much like I had seen it already, but I enjoyed the visuals. So I was you know what? I enjoy the visuals. This is fair enough. And I'm not feeling anything too upsetting about plot disturbances or anything like that. I didn't feel disturbance in the Force yet. Not yet. The second of the sequel films, however, while I enjoy it visually and I enjoy some of the fights, I think it's really interesting and clever choreography. When it comes to whenever I think about the plot, little plot holes that make big kind of plot inconsistencies, and then just also things I think they could have done smarter. Sure. Then I'm that one was kind of a letdown for me. Really good ideas presented, but then you kind of let it down. Except for in that movie when they said, "No, your parents are just random scavengers." I was okay, that's pretty awesome. I like the thought that someone comes from nothing. But now I can't even enjoy that. And that's all I can say about that. Yeah. But then the third movie came out, and I was.
What were you expecting? Were you expecting?
I was going into it expecting this. even if I didn't necessarily like all their choices in the second one, I'm like, well, you know what? We already have an established plot. We understand where we're going. It's the rise of Skywalker. I'm thinking, okay, maybe we're gonna have this interesting movie about the destruction of the Force, or this this change in the idea of what it means to be
Exactly.
moral, right? Like, what does it mean to be a Jedi or a Sith, or have the Jedi
Balance to
done?
the Force.
Yeah, you like maybe we cannot finally accept that Jedi have done bad things, and have also committed some awful things, just like the Sith. So then we can work towards this thing where maybe there's either a balancing of the Force through a new understanding of the Sith and the Jedi as just inherent parts of like the Force and of people, or maybe it's something different where we just completely eliminate the ability to use the Force, and now people are just going by themselves, buck wild, shooting lasers that nobody can hit.
The rise of atheism in Star Wars.
The rise of a godless world, Star Wars edition. Nietzsche, what are you doing here? Everybody's favorite Sith Lord, Nietzsche. Yeah, I was expecting too much, but I thought because of the tone and the ideas presented in the last one, with the way they showed Luke as like kind of a dangerous character leading Ben on his journey, and in the process of that, I thought, okay, it seems like they're trying to show the Jedi are not all good, and the Sith are also power hungry. This movie was not that.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I'll also say my thoughts of leading up
Yes.
to this. Very similar about Force Awakens. I was like, cool. Like I was one of the people that was like, okay, if you remake this, that's fine because we haven't had like Star Wars in like 30 years. Okay, fine. There are issues. I would not have basically Death Star 3.0 again, but I like the characters just like you, like the visuals, and oh gosh, leading up to that movie was one of the greatest points of excitement in my life, and just watching the movie was also like, I was like, I am back in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, when people said criticisms of like, but it's the same, I'm saying, hold on, let's watch The Last Jedi and see, because if they do the same thing, if it's Episode 5 2.0, then okay, sure. But going to The Last Jedi, similar to you, there were plot holes and like character issues and like things that were like little holes in the entire like script of it, which I do think should have gone through one more pass, i.e. Flying Leia, i.e. Rose making one of the worst speeches in film history. That being said, the more I watch it, the more I like it because I understand what the concept is, which is what you were trying to say, right? Like the kind of the democratization of the Force and like the nuance of good and evil and how we tackle the legacy of the past. How do we look at history? How do we look at like the fallacies of like old orders and old institutions and whatnot? And the way The Last Jedi says, and which I love, is we can still be better. Like literally what Yoda says in The Last Jedi. Like we are like, oh shit, I need to look this up. Like, sorry.
Oh, during the burning of the books or whatever.
Yeah, it was. It's like we are what they grow beyond, and I think that's very like a very well done like. But like that scene is pretty much why I love the movies, because it's like how you tackle personal failures, tackle institutional failures, and it's basically to say like acknowledging the wrongs, but also moving forward and to become a better version of yourself, right? And like seeing that concept, like I'm one of those people who are like, this concept is great that I can forgive some of the issues that like you and I both see. So, but here's my thing going into this. As most of you know, J.J. Abrams directed Episode 7. Rian Johnson directed Episode 8. J.J. Abrams likes to sell mystery boxes. Rian Johnson was like, hey, this mystery box.
Exactly.
And like in some ways it worked, in some ways it didn't. For the most part, I actually liked what he did. But now J.J. Abrams is coming back and he's like digging this mystery box out of like, he's like, why did you bury this thing? Why did you bury my mystery box? And that's kind of what I'm afraid it was going to be. That being said, I told you, remember when I saw the trailer? that like back in like August, it was like one of the things I wanted them to tackle, as you were saying, is the legacy of the Force in a way that nothing else mattered. Like the conflict between the resistance, resistance and the First Order and the Empire and the Rebels, like doesn't matter. It's tackling the legacy of the Force. And I was like, oh, this huge fleet, like it's just like some like ghost like thing and everything. Like that could be cool.
I remember you saying.
You remember me being also idealistic in that sense.
It's like that seems so unreasonable. That must be a cool image of the Force. I loved that. I was
so optimistic.
We were so young.
Do you remember what I said?
It would be a journey into the Force, and with the Force being the leading kind of like a spiritual journey that wasn't physical or tangible, but you see all these things. It's like this is an interesting kind of fear-based. The Force is going to lead them through all these fear trials.
Exactly.
Interesting concept.
Yeah. What do I know right now? But do you remember what I said about the movie? Like my one sentence pitch of this movie, like to describe this movie.
Was it just gonna? I thought it was just gonna be like just the Force, like Inception.
No, sorry, I'm saying about what I thought about the movie.
Oh, about this? Oh my goodness.
Well, what was my one sentence thing? Like, what was the first, like one of the first things I ever told you?
It's disappointing. It's meh. I'm trying to think.
It's the most expensive fanfic
ever made. That's right.
And it literally feels it's like okay. First off, if you're scared about spoilers, what are you doing? Like either you care that you've seen this, or you don't care enough to see this, in which whatever. We're not to be your parents. Like listen or don't listen. But when you're like when let's have a couple fake out deaths. Let's have to like she's gonna die. And you know what'd be cool? Star Destroyers placed with a Death Star cannon on them. And now
each one has one.
Each one has one.
Oh yeah.
And all that we need a evil. Bring the Emperor back and have a little epic fight between and we're gonna have a fight between Kylo Ren, who's gonna be redeemed, and then we're gonna have how do we end this movie? Kevin Feige. You know that part in Avengers Endgame? No, hey, can you bring the ending? Can they copy your homework, please? Can we have it? How do we make I Am Iron Man and in a Star Wars context? I Am Jedi. Yeah. Thanks, Kevin Feige. I'll reward you by having you produce the next Star Wars movie. That's the actual transcript of Kathleen Kennedy going, which is actually Kevin Feige is actually producing a Star Wars movie, which is actually pretty cool. But I like to imagine that's how he got the gig.
How do we don't need a snap. We just need an extra lightsaber. That's all.
Let's okay.
This movie has a plot. Let's at least follow. At least we can follow this easier than we did with the Cats one. Sometimes.
Barely.
Yeah, because it also goes back on itself. But
okay, let's talk about this. The movie, the opening crawl. Okay, first, my expectations were so low because I read the reviews and because here's the thing, I usually don't like to read reviews of like movies. You know how I am, but like these big movies like Avengers and Star Wars, I just can't not see them. So again, one of my favorite reviewers, Phantom Entertainment, Dan Murrow and Ralph Cornett, they basically said, look, this is a very messy movie, but like it has a lot of fan service and stuff. So I'm like, okay, there are movies that are like very stuffed that I can see the concept. Like again, like it's kind of like The Last Jedi in some sense. It'd be like, I can suspend my disbelief a little bit if you have something interesting to say. Like there's some things I can forgive. There's some movies that are so stuffed, but I'm like I enjoyed the ride, right? So I'm going and trying to enjoy the ride and be like, okay, I'm just gonna try to suspend all my disbelief. Okay, the opening crawl goes, the dead sneak, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I will say one thing. I like the opening scene. I actually like the opening scene. I don't know about you, but I'm like, oh, this is cool. I like the set design to be like, and see the Emperor like with his white eyes, and like, okay, like I like the atmosphere, right? I like the production design, like Kylo Ren, like being like, I don't want to, I don't want to like, deal with you because I'm the like I want to control everything, which was his character, and then he has this whole conversation with good old Sheev, and then Sheev has to basically say the same thing he said in episode 3: the dark side of the Force, the abilities that some consider unnatural, and I'm like, okay, but like, and then the Star Destroyers rise up, and I'm like, okay, no, because I'm like. Actually, I was like, okay, like maybe we have, they get involved. Maybe they start going around the galaxy. Maybe have some like epic, space battles. Like they're being deployed against the galaxy. Like something like like the Lord of the Rings, where you see like all the bad guys raiding the town site. That was what I was thinking. I was like, something happened. Turns out they stay there the entire movie
for no reason. They're fully functional already. I really don't know why they kept it there the entire movie. They could. He had to wait for the right moment.
Why are this? Okay. Anyways, we cut to our heroes. And like they've been like stranded on the planet for like 2 years, trying to gain like supporters, but no one's respond to their calls, whatever, right? And then they also did the whole light speed jump scene, which I was like, okay, this is kind of fun. Like, yeah. Okay. I can get through this. And then they go through this little scavenger hunt. And that's when I started going.
Yeah. It's one of those movies, huh?
Got to find the thing. To find the thing. To find the key to the thing. So we can find old Sheev.
If we find all the stones, then finally we can defeat Thanos. I was like, oh, wait a second. This isn't as many stones as I remember at all.
Oh my. And the way, okay, so they, I don't even remember the sequence, but one of the things the one thing I did like is actually, no, that's before. Dude, I don't even remember the sequence. I've seen this like 2 weeks ago, but one of the things it started to become clear to me that this was not working was when they started doing introducing Lando.
Oh yeah.
Like it was fine, but it started being like, let's do the obvious thing. Okay, guy in a mask comes in and like saves the heroes. And then you're like, oh, that's Lando. And like I was talking with my friend Brianna, you know her. And and we're both like, yeah, that's fine. That's definitely Lando. And then it's like, takes off. It's Billy D. Williams and Lando. Obligatory applause.
Yeah, right. Of course.
I clap. Taken from Red Letter Mia's page. I clap because I recognize. I clap. He's fine. Like again. It's not something that I mind, but I'm like, it was like a herald of things to come. Whereas like you do things like of stuff like that, and also stuff that like is unanswered. Like for example, like later when they run off and wait, that scene? Oh my gosh, I just realized this. That scene where they get chased in like the little like religious party thing or the cultural party thing,
exactly.
Is the same scene from The Force Awakens. When the First Order
my goodness,
chases them. Except like it's literally like the same setup, except they're on a little barge and have the worst dialogue ever.
They fly now?
They fly now?
They fly now.
They fly now.
Oh my! Come on, come on, dude.
And then Ray. Okay. First, before I say this, look, if you like this movie, for like the 2 people that listen to this, or someone in the future who wants to like fight dirt on me for hating The Rise of Skywalker, if you like this movie, legitimately good for you. I wish I enjoyed this. I have no problem with people liking this movie. I don't hate people for liking this. I wish I was talking with Brianna and she's like, yeah, like I feel sad that you are able to like things like these, and I'm like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, it's although I got really angry at one of my other friends, and he was like, "Yeah, you and your critical mind just get in the way." I'm like, "Don't say that. Don't say that."
It doesn't
No,
get in
and
the way. It's just this isn't one of those movies where you could enjoy it as fully, right? I mean, first of all, the moment that they say there's only two of these star guides that have ever been invented, the bad guys have one, so now we have to get a map to find the other star guide.
no, we have to find the knife to find the
And
map,
map that exactly. That's right. That's right. We have to
which
find.
is yeah. But continuing off the first act, we also never know what Ray, what Finn wanted to say to Ray, which, but we will never know. We'll never know, David. We'll never know. But
Yeah,
Finn will carry it to his grave.
yeah. That grave was never there. Oh shoot. Yeah, the movie sets up a lot of little things. There are a lot of clever lore references, but they don't really matter because the lore has like any original Star Wars lore has been kind of, ignored or given less value. So bringing up like random lore stuff from the comic books doesn't really help much now. Um,
Oh,
you have a
I
lot of
will get into that later. I'll get into that later. That's a very interesting point I forgot to bring up. But yeah, one of the things I also like going off of that. There's a scene where like Ray's like trying to heal that creature thing,
the
and
worms.
again,
Yeah.
and this is where this is gonna be a recurring theme. Great scene. Wish this was in a better movie.
Right? I mean, come on.
I was like, this is cool. This is about the intimacy of the Force, like the callback to like Obi-Wan saying, like, the Force is, project, in all living themes and harmony and unity, which was a better movie. Because what did they do? They literally go to a planet that, and then, okay, no, before they get to the planet, they fake out Chewbacca's death.
You know what's awful about that? What I can't stand about Chewbacca's death is also they did the worst kind of fake out because they also removed tension right after. So they do this thing where you clearly see Chewbacca going onto a ship. Finn has been watching the ship he goes onto, so you would logically think that Finn knows which ship Chewbacca was in because he was literally watching it happen. And then he says, "Ray, Ray, Ray," which good acting on his part because he actually sounds terrified. Like he's like, "This is the last movie I'm gonna have a role in if it goes bad."
It's the last time I'm ever gonna scream, Ray.
Ray, I hope there's no red flags. Ray, look, they got Chewy Bakas. They got our classic Chewy. So she says, "Oh heck, time to do my little finger thing." And all of a sudden, she does the cute little electricity thing from Thor Ragnarok. A little finger sparks and all that. And she blows it up, and then Finn's like, "Oh my goodness, you actually killed my friend. That sucks." And then 10 seconds later or something, they do a 10-second scene where they cut to or maybe it's like a minute or two later. They do a cutaway. They do a 10-second scene where they show Chewbacca on the Death Star. It's like, oh, you got him here. And then 10 seconds later, that's the end of the scene.
I mean, you said the Death Star, which is technically wrong, but at the same time, it's also technically right. Because every ship is a Death Star.
Yeah, every single ship has the same capability.
And the scene before that, from the trailer, which I thought was I love the trailer where it's like, Rey sees Kylo and they have their little flippity-doo, which is like, again, I'm like, this is I like the scene, but it's so out of they're like, insert good scene with
trailer bait. It's just trailer bait.
It feels literally so like smushed in, like oh my gosh.
Especially since they just established that she can control an entire entire ship trying to go away with the Force. So, but for this scene, instead of doing that, she's just gonna do a cool little flip with her little swordy sword.
Do a flip. And then they go to a planet where Poe meets his former fling. I don't even remember. But and then they have another fake out. C-3PO.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but then he comes back later. Like I'm like in a way that seems he might like regain his memory. It's like it doesn't work because okay, one of the things I do like about C-3PO and I like about this movie generally, I actually like the comedy better in this movie because it doesn't feel Marvel-y. It's more like C-3PO having dry humor. And that's the one thing I say I like about that movie. That being said, for that scene, I also didn't like it. Like, I kind of like Babu Frick, like the little like the mechanics guy. Like he was fun. Like I didn't hate him. But
no Baby Yoda, but he's okay.
Yeah, but it was literally just like it's another fake out that's happening, and then later there's a scene where like Kylo Ren comes, they go on the Star Destroyer. I forgot the sequence already, but like they have a little fight from like basically carried over from The Last Jedi, where there's a Force connection, which again they don't really explain the rules properly. Okay, I'm gonna be a little soft on this. I like the fact that they carry over. That's one concept to carry over from The Last Jedi. That was like, okay, this is cool. Like
the Force
fights, yeah. But it also becomes, I think I told you before, it becomes like a Thor, like it becomes an issue with Thor, whereas like what counts, and it's like the Thor in like Mjolnir and like Thor, it's like what is like if the floor isn't worthy, shouldn't the hammer go down? And I feel like it's also the same thing when like you realize like Kylo Ren can see Darth Vader, the helmet of Darth Vader. It's like how did he see that? Like again, minor complaint, but that's just something I thought about.
Yeah, and I would say also that when it comes to the visuals, because of this whole Force Bridge thing, there's a lot of really interesting visuals going on with this little battle sequence while they're on that planet with, Poe's fling or whatever, who he doesn't get a kiss from, which I like. She keeps on just saying no. I'm like, all right, fair enough. That's fun. Yeah. But there's this really weird thing where in the last movie, they did show that there's a clear force bridge that allows them to communicate. Yeah. And maybe even touch. But in this movie, these two characters are so powerful that clearly the rules of the Force Bridge are straight up teleportation of items, material. Mm-hmm. You can actually take an item from somebody else, no matter how far away they are. It's just yours now.
Yeah.
And it's just really like, I don't know. It makes for some really interesting visuals and really cool scenes. Like, nice scene, bro. But then at the end of it, I'm like, this is just like the whole entire Lightspeed jump from the last film that just destroyed an entire fleet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like, it's like it again, in a better movie, the rules are more forgivable, right?
Yes.
This is one of the things where I'm gonna be like, okay, you added on to something from the previous movie, which is more than I can say for 90% of this movie.
Yeah.
And then they get back on the Star Destroyer to save Chewie. The one thing I liked about that is Hux is the spy.
Yes.
Love it. One of my favorite parts of probably the entire sequel trilogy. He's like, the sequel trilogy. He's like, I don't want you guys to win. I want Kylo Ren to lose. And I'm like, on point character. The only thing that I didn't like about this is that Kylo Ren should have choked the crap out of him. I get like Richard Grant's character, like the old Imperial guy, was like the one that shot him, and I'm like, also, it's also kind of like I feel like he didn't do it convincingly. General Hux, I think he kind of caused his own demise because I see John Wick 3, and you and I both know that if you really want to convince that you've been like attacked, you need to do more than one gunshot. More than one. So it's that I still want Kylo Ren to choke, but that is honestly my favorite part of the movie, like hands down. But then Rey escapes, and this is the part of the movie that I think I quit. When Kylo Ren goes, "You're a Palpatine," and I'm like,
like, why did they get rid of the whole point of the Force? Like, it doesn't have to be necessarily.
Yeah, your parents are nobodies. That's a perfect, good ideology of the Force. But then you basically, J.J. Abrams goes, oh crap, Well, what if we made his grandfather somebody? That would be.
I made Snoke. Like I made him lie.
Yeah. Yes. Oh gosh.
Why?
That's when I quit because I was like, no. Like, I didn't even have a problem with Paladin coming back necessarily. Like, I think there was a potential problem, but I was like, okay, if you can explain well. But I was like, when you can literally, you're making a plot based on Reddit threads. Like,
we have to make
like
sure the fans know that they're
theories.
right. If fans are wrong, then they'll be upset.
Yes, because we must completely course correct from Last Jedi. Anyways, and that's when everything fell apart. And just to fast forward to a couple other things, force healing is an issue, is a can of worms that you open. Like, Qui-Gon Jinn would have appreciated that.
Actually, yes. A lot of characters would have really liked that. Because it's established in all of the video games, but not a single film.
Yeah.
Until this, these ones.
They also established in The Mandalorian, which is pretty, which is fine. Like, in that context, it's fine. But that's a talk for a different day. But yeah, it's just one of those, like, you open a can of worms, and then Leia, again, this movie has a problem with, like, death that it just doesn't do well. Like, Leia dying. Okay, I am going to be very soft on the way they use Leia, because I'm like, she passed away, you kind of use her, you had to work around it, right? But at the same time, the way it doesn't really work. Again, I'm not going to bag on them for that, because you know what she reminds me of? An NPC character in video games.
Doesn't really matter unless the main character interacts. Just kind of there.
It's like because it is like repurposed footage, and it feels like the actors are changing their lines to fit a certain answer, right? And again, this is part I'm going to be a little bit softer because I'm like, I get it, but it just doesn't work, especially when like her death in the movie just feels so, it's like, forced. You have her assistant be like, now she's gonna go off to die. Basically, you're like,
That's just, it's just gonna happen.
Which leads to a scene with Han Solo and Kylo Ren, which, okay, finish the sentence. Good movie. I mean, sorry. Good scene. Good scene.
I mean, bad movie. It would have been great in a better movie.
Yes, exactly, right.
Good scene, bad movie. I mean, it has good emotion. Always nice to see Ford again, but it's got good emotion. There's something really satisfying about seeing him truly just throw out that lightsaber that he held onto so dearly. But also, like,
but why do you have to repeat the same dialogue from The Force Awakens?
Exactly.
It also, like, kind of cheapens it, but also, like, again, in a better movie, you forgive these things more.
Yes. And also, Leia's death and a lot of deaths for different characters are just so inconsistent. Sometimes they kind of disappear, like in the old movies, where they just kind of disappear, their whole body's just gone. And then other times they wait for something to happen and then disappear.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know when is when, or which is which, or why is why.
And then also fan service. Hey, you know how everyone no one in the universe except for the fans cares that Chewie got a medal?
Classic Chewie with his medal.
That got a clap in my theater. I'm like,
did it really?
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah, like, it's not fan service. It's fine, but again, it's like, I don't really hate that specific issue, but it's just a issue, like a bigger, like the little things like add up. Like in The Last Jedi, like the little things for you, like this, like kind of made you didn't enjoy as much. For me, I was able to forgive it more. But the problem is, this movie didn't have a good concept. There's no base for this movie to stand on. And that's my issue with this movie, which will lead to our future conversation about the JJ cut, which I'll get to later.
Yes. Let's talk about let's talk about, I think, a very important part of the ending. I think there's a very important fake out, couple fake outs, 3 fake outs, maybe 4. I can't remember. There's so many.
Kylo Ren falling off a ledge
Into a giant death pit of
yeah,
electricity.
Rey dying.
Before that, when Rey even like is going against Palpatine, and then they shoot this scene where she has one lightsaber, and he says, "I am all of the Sith," right? And then she says, and she's trying to pull, Ben's lightsaber, and the moment it attaches to her hand, they shoot it so that you think, okay, so he's dead, which is why she's able to now say. That's why she got a good grip of his lightsaber, and that's why she's able to say, with the music kind of slowing down and swelling in the background, "I am all the Jedi." So they kind of shoot it so that you really do think that he died and that she is truly all of the Jedi, right?
Yeah.
And then this like really cool, visually interesting scene. Don't care about the Sith ghosts in the background in the Coliseum. That's its own issue. We got this huge scene of beautiful fight and all this, and then we have this seemingly mutual destruction of like the two. It's like, oh wow, she doesn't have much energy left at all, and Palpatine is just he's been fried, deep fried, because we don't win wars by killing the ones we hate, but by saving the ones we love, except unless you get electrocuted. Then it's not a death. So you think there's this really good balance that has been struck, because she's like, I am all of the other ones. And then all of a sudden, a little hand pops out. Like, what? Why? You had something really beautiful. You said you established that there has been something lost. We have some sort of balance made. She says, "I am all the Jedi." They have this beautiful scene of all of the previous Jedi speaking through her and with her. So it's like finally we have established some sort of beautiful something. And then a hand pops out. What is this?
It's trash. Again, fake outs are a problem, as we established. And that entire third act, I hate it too. Also, again, there's some good scenes in there. I like Sith demons. Cool. Set the production. Cool. Oh, we missed the entire part I need to get back to. I'll get back to later. Okay. Set production. Cool. Mm-hmm. But then you start it's a decent scene in a bad movie. But then they shoot it in a way that after the entire thing collapses, it seems like these ghosts are actually getting hit by rocks. You're like, like these little things are like when you don't have a structure. It's like a building, right? If you don't have a good concrete foundation, I don't care how good your 50th floor, golden bathtub is. Jeez Louise.
It's spiritual rocks, don't you know? They were ghost rocks.
Gosh. Anyways, but also one of the things I hated, I was like, okay, give me this one thing. The fleet shows up, and it's like so many on screen. I'm like, okay, here we go. Here we go. We gotta fight. We're just gonna focus on X-wings and.
We're not gonna fire a single laser except for the one we did at the planet where Poe's girlfriend was at. We're not gonna fire a single laser.
Oh, and then right after that, we're gonna have Palpatine shoot lightning, disable everyone, and just literally cut the tension so quick. And then one of the things to skip about is they visit the second Death Star, which is stupid.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams cannot escape the past, and also it's just like that thing should have been obliterated. Fine, whatever. Anyways, get to the ending. Let's get to the ending. Yeah. I hate the ending.
Yeah,
just as much. Here. Even though in concept I get what you're trying to do. The movie is trying to say that in a way it wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to say this is how we branch out The Last Jedi. We give Rey an identity, right? Of blood. But we give her a dilemma. of basically like, are you more than your bloodline?
Yes.
I see what you're trying to do with. I don't like the concept of it because it's kind of like been done and tried in like so many other different movies. Like you're more than you're more than your blood is. Like there's decent amount of movies that have done that. But even but like they do it in a way that just doesn't really capture the spirit of that even when they were trying to do that, which is why I hate the ending. I get it. You're posthumously trying to take the Skywalker. You're trying to take the Skywalker name. Man, that doesn't work.
It doesn't. What is your full name, also, young lady? What is your full name?
You need to watch. I'm telling you, you need to watch Hot Fuzz because there's a wonderful meme that's used off of that for that part that I need. You have to once you watch the movie.
Okay.
This is my plea to you. Go watch Hot Fuzz, and then I'll send you the meme. That's like the whole like, what does she say afterwards? It's great. But no, it's like, oh yeah, what's your full name? I'm Ray Skywalker, and I'm like, I'm rolling in my internal grave, and then she has the yellow lightsaber. I'm like, no.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy. Truly, a balance has been found. How interesting. Also, well, because I agree with you. I think the issue is that there's a lot of different ways that the movie is trying to go with that. You could say that you should be able to have the agency to choose what you will be called, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you should also be held as a knowing person who comes from a bloodline that is one that has oppressed many people and killed many people, and you should accept that you were part of that bloodline. Even if you didn't do anything, just I don't want to say like know your privilege or anything. It's not at all
it's like the whole sense of the father type of thing.
Yeah, right. So it's this weird thing between saying you should have the agency to choose how you want to be identified through your family name and also through yourself, but also just ignoring the past by saying, I'm not Palpatine, because I really thought she was going to say that, and I thought she was going to say, but I'm a different Palpatine. Like she would force people to see her as just Rey, or maybe just don't even have a last name, just call yourself Rey.
I would have liked that.
I actually thought she was just gonna say just Rey, and then instead of taking the name of the guy she kissed for like 10 seconds and then he died. We skipped over that, but I think the movie skipped over that too.
Yeah, well, I think we need to drop this very bad topic. But anyways, before we get to inspirations for this movie and the JJ cut, before we leave, I'm gonna give this a less than a movie because there are good scenes. They're like, I said this about The Last Jedi when I first watched it. I said this is the best of Star Wars. This is the worst of Star Wars. This is even more so. But there's also a lot of the worst of Star Wars. There is a lot here, but there's also some good stuff. Like it's like enjoyable if you can completely turn off your brain.
Yes. Yes.
And there are enjoyable entertainment moments in this. So it's not terrible, but it's very disappointing. It is very disappointing.
I would have to agree. I would say I'm actually somewhere in between meh. Like it is one of the most average films.
Just a movie.
It is just a movie. Like this is one of the most extremely average things I've seen in a while. This is ridiculously 50-50. Like this is the most 2.5 out of 5 you'll see. But at the same time, I'm also totally leaning towards the like lower side of meh, as in this is less than a movie, because again, when I see plot holes, I get upset. But I also am one of the people who likes when someone sticks to their guns. And the issue is that guns could not be stuck to because there was different directors holding the gun in the first place, right?
They were stealing guns from each other.
And they were stealing. This was an awful arms race, and they were just taking guns from each other. It just wasn't working out.
Yeah, and then they accidentally the gun went off at like very awkward points. while they're trying to wrestle control from each other.
It's
But
true.
yeah, no, I agree with you. This movie suffers. I think you could have made a good movie off The Last Jedi, but also I feel like this movie, the sequel trilogy, is just sadly disappointing because I would say just mostly because of this movie, only because it's like you can't stick the landing, and you could have passed the baton, right? Um, and but JJ didn't want to do it for reasons I will get to later. I say that phrase a lot, but yeah, I think this will be looked back as the sequel trilogy that should have been better managed and
Mm.
had a better plan, or because Star Wars has a bad history of directors of basically kicking off directors and everything, which we'll talk about in later. But yeah, less than the movie. Let's talk about very quick about inspirations. Have you heard of the comic book line called Dark Empire?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
They
So
actually referenced it in the TV show I used to watch.
yes, they basically did Dark Empire Light, which, if you know, like back in the day, before Disney, before the Dark Times,
Yes.
before the Empire, Disney based back in the day, Lucasfilm basically was able to license Star Wars works. Everyone else could write their own like stories post Return of the Jedi, right? Lucas never endorsed any of them, but like in terms of like the fan community, you're like, yeah, okay, this is like, you know, expanded universe stuff, right? And one of the things was like Palpatine coming back,
Hmm.
basically, and does the same way. He takes like he's like hiding in the shadows with like clones. He comes out with his fleet also, which is also run by like the dark side of the force, and he does have world destroyers or something like very similar concept, but it also has to has to be defeated by Jedi, and because of destroying his spirit, not through hate and stuff like that, and all that stuff. But what's interesting and what I find interesting about the inspiration, it's a very interesting comic book arc if you just look up the Wikipedia article. What's very interesting about that is that arc is still mixed. Like
Hmm.
you talk to people who love the expanded universe, and one of the things they hate about this thing is like you got rid of all the previous books and stuff. Dark Empire is one of the most like middle of the things like people loved about the old canon, and like Miller wrote because it does. And oh, gosh, we're going back to the issues of the movie. But one of the things it does, it has an issue is that bring Palpatine back kind of like recontextualizes the movies.
Yes,
Yeah,
because then
and
also like, where was he the whole time? How does the Force work for multiple Sith, or when there's only like two or three Sith left in the whole universe? Like,
yeah, or not even that. It's just like this Darth Vader sacrifice
oh yeah, because then
is in
yeah,
vain.
that's
Is in vain, right? Like not the act itself. Like he sacrificed his life for his son. Like that's a noble act, and that cannot be taken away, regardless of what happens. But it's like the importance of him destroying like Palpatine, which is very clear in Return Jedi. I remember as a kid watching the movie, but knowing the comic book what happens, I'm like, oh, I'll tell my dad, oh, in the comic books, he comes back, he's gonna be destroyed in 20 years, right?
yeah.
When Disney bought it, I was like, thank God I don't have to think about this anymore.
Oh no, Darth Mickey the Wise. It's a story the Jedi wouldn't tell you.
But yeah, that's the thing. Why would you take the source material from there?
It's upsetting. It's a weird choice. It is a weird choice.
It is.
Speaking of weird choices, though, this whole director's cut fiasco.
Let's
Please
talk
tell
about.
me. Yeah, because I've only heard
Let's
bits and pieces. I want to
let's
hear
give
you
a
on that.
let's give a background before. And I told you this background, right?
Yeah.
Colin Trevorrow was supposed to direct this. He directed Jurassic World, which was fine. Then he wrote Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Terrible. Then he wrote a movie and directed a movie called Book of Henry. Got less than 20% of Rotten Tomatoes. Disney fired him in the winter/spring of 2018. The winter spring of 2018. The movie was originally supposed to come out in May 2019.
Huh.
So, two things. Colin Trevorrow was bad, but also Kathleen Kennedy, the head of Lucasfilm, does not know how to manage directors. And we can go into this whole thing about how, like, in Rogue One, Gareth Edwards, the director, got sidelined. We can talk about how the Han Solo movie, where Phil Lord and Chris Miller got fired, like, 90% of the way through production and had to reshoot the entire movie. But this is another instance of that. So what do they get? They get the safe director, J.J. Abrams, right? Mm-hmm. Who is he's a competent filmmaker, and I get that. And I was like, okay, he has to close the trilogy. But here's the one thing that cannot be overstated. And this is why I will give J.J. Abrams like a lot of sympathy here. He has less time to write a script than most people. So this movie got extended December 2019, but he still got like not a lot of time to like write this thing.
Sadly,
like,
it's true.
He's got like very much like, you know, a very short time to write it. So I feel very bad for Junior. He doesn't have time to write this, but he gets the script down, right? Shoots it. He shoots it. So a lot of things are just basically J.J. Abrams is handicapped with not having enough time. He had all the time to work for The Force Awakens. He didn't have time for this. Let's go to Reddit, shall we?
Oh, no.
There's a Reddit thread where basically it's just people that are committed to leaks of Star Wars. And this guy is able to leak the entire plot of The Rise of Skywalker before the movie comes out. But the same anonymous guy on Reddit also says about this. And basically, let me look. Basically, I'm going to try to read a couple excerpts. So, the report claims, this Reddit user, that Abrams was, quote, devastated, unquote, by the film's final cut, which was 40 minutes shorter than expected would be. Consequently, the phrase released to J.J. Cush has been trending on Twitter with one actor from the film urging Disney to include the deletions on DVD. There's basically, this article goes on to talk about, which comes from the Reddit forum, where it talks about all the scenes that would have been in the original 3-hour cut. And claims that that they were going to be actors, like during the first cut scene, that these actors would come back in costume. There's and a lot of things that were going to happen, right? And we're also going to know what Finn was going to say to Rey. We're going to have more stuff about Kylo Ren being conflicted. Okay, let's start with like this. None of this is on surface level surprising.
Yeah.
At all. There's something in film called an assembly cut. And what I mean by this is you take all the film, you take extra scenes, and you smash it up together. And you give it a cut. And then the studio gives you a bunch of notes, or you and your editor, you, the director, and your editor, you trim it up, right? And so first off, like, obviously there's going to be scenes. Let's talk about the whole thing, like, that this is not JG's cut.
Yeah.
First off, why is this surprising either?
Well, no film is any, like, if any editing ever goes on through a studio, no film is ever the director's cut by that standard, right? So,
exactly, right? Like, I don't even, okay, first off, this is an anonymous Reddit forum that, even though it has broken leaks and stuff, like, first off, shouldn't be stressed. It should be taken a huge grain of salt, but pretending this other thing, you really think that Disney is going to be like, okay, JJ, you can do what you want? Like, no. Like, this is a studio movie, right? This is not an auteur. Like, the concept of an auteur, or like person with an artistic vision, like, goes back to the 70s with the French New Wave, and like George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese. But even that, like, is a theory that has also still been argued. So that's basically, I'm adding all these different elements to basically show that it's not as black and white. When J.J. Abrams signs up for a movie like this, he knows that the studio is going to say is going to potentially cut the movie. In an interview with The Force Awakens, he said, technically, I get final cut. but I know Disney probably can use their lawyers to find legal loopholes through it. So none of this should be surprised.
Yeah.
But let's this is regular.
Yeah.
And not surprising. But also let's just talk about like let's
this movie does not need 40 minutes extra.
Exactly. Because what have we said about this entire movie? The concept is not good enough for this movie to stand on.
Yeah.
Would adding 40 minutes maybe be like, okay, things are slightly more cohesive. Sure. But it doesn't mean that the movie is conceptually any better than that. Maybe we get a couple more space battles. We maybe get a couple pieces of dialogue. A couple things that I want. Oh, cool. It's Ewan McGregor and Samuel Jackson in costume. But does this make a good film? No, it adds slightly more scenes into it. When your entire movie is set on like a trajectory that is already like a it's going to be maybe a slightly more stable, but it still doesn't get rid of the fundamental issues of the movie. The fundamental issues of the movie do not change whatsoever. There was a movie that came out about 4 years ago called Batman vs. Superman.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
The theatrical
extra cut.
No, but here's the thing. What people have said about the director's cut is even like at best, if you like Batman vs. Superman, cool. But the director's cut was basically made things more cohesive, a more cohesive movie to a bad movie.
And it didn't even help. It did not even help because I saw the movie and I saw the extra bonus scene director's cut. I'm sorry, but that movie dragged as it was.
Yes.
Adding that extra scene, I didn't care about the cohesiveness of the movie. If anything, I thought that the director's cut would have actually been a director's cut. Like they should have just cut some scenes from the film, made it shorter, made it a bit more reasonable.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like people, okay, here's the thing. You and I didn't like this movie, but I think this whole release to JJ Cub has the fundamental issue of people not, first of all, believing in anonymous sources. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but you shouldn't believe in it. Even when they're proved to be true, it's an exception to the rule. There are things about like, hey, why is it that episode 7 and episode 9 have more confirmed leaks? Maybe it's because it's J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot. I've heard that theory. Fair. That's fine. But like still, we shouldn't be basing, our thoughts on movies based on anonymous Reddit sources and taking them as gospel. Number one. Number two, people need to understand that cuts are made all the time. All the time. And number three, you have to ask yourself the question, does adding the 40 minutes make it a better movie? If you believe so, good for you. But for you and I, we do not believe so.
It's just a longer haul. Now I just have to see more of the movie. Seeing more of a movie I don't really like doesn't help me enjoy it.
It would make me probably at best go from less than the movie to just a movie. Like at best. It would not make me say this is a good movie. Fundamental issues in the movie. Well, we recorded for as long as the Rise of Skywalker. So
oh my goodness, you're right. And we did more than the movie did in that time.
Yeah, and we had more enjoyment than this and Cats combined. So it is. So unfortunately, I am a working man, and I need to go. But we will. But thank you for watching. You can. We will have one more episode by the end of the month, recapping all of 2019, and then we'll probably have another 5-month hiatus, or maybe I'll try to find a different co-host. But you can find us. You can find us on all the pages that are linked to this video / audio. I'm trying to see if I can. I'm gonna try to see if I can like make this like. I'm gonna try the audio video, maybe split the video into multiple parts because. Well, if you watch this full video or listen to this full audio at 2 hours and 30 minutes, thank you so much for listening because you're listening to two people that are, two schmucks who don't know anything. If you're our friends, the couple people I know, still thank you so much for listening. And Yeah. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for David for joining me again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a fun one. These
This
were
is
two movies that really needed to be broken down.
Yes, it did. Yes,
Yeah.
it did. I feel better now. But yes, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you on the next episode of the First Rate Podcast.
Meow meow.
Meow meow.